It's got Siri built in. Shall we begin? That worked really well. Everyone looked up. So I'm going to get started. This is a very small, intimate group setting because we're competing with John Mayer next door. It happens. It's okay. I don't take offense. Elmer. So everyone gets their own table today. So welcome. My name is Matt Gruhn. I am the Assistant Director of OYE, oye.org, everyone's favorite U.S. Supreme Court project that's for some reason based in Chicago. We are based at the Chicago-Kent College of Law, part of the Illinois Institute of Technology, right in the heart of downtown Chicago. OYE's been around for a little while, and we're starting to do some really new and interesting things with the project. We've been around for 25 years, more than a little while. So I'm going to go over a little bit of background about the project, and then I'm going to hand it off to Christina Walker, who's going to talk about a project we're particularly excited about covering state Supreme Courts. But I'm going to go into a little background about OYE for anyone who's not familiar with it. OYE, like I said, has been around for about 25 years, and it started with the really discrete purpose of making these 9 people more accessible and comprehensible to the American public, particularly young people, high school students, undergraduate students. So this survey happens every couple of years. I'm guessing if I did a survey at something like CaliCon, the number would be a little higher, but the average American, only 2% of average Americans can name all 9 of these very important people. That's kind of sad, kind of understandable because of the way the institution operates. But when you think about it, these people are making decisions, and more frequently making decisions like this, that affect average Americans in a really tangible way, affect how you can get your health care, affect who you can marry. They're really important people, and we don't elect them, but we should at least have some kind of oversight over them, right? We should at least know what they're doing in that great marble palace in Washington, D.C., right behind the Capitol. And since 1955, the court has sort of offered a way for people to understand what's going on inside that marble palace. They don't have video, obviously, but since 1955, they have been recording all the proceedings that go on from gavel to gavel at the U.S. Supreme Court. That recording system started out really amateurishly and has sort of evolved into something that's only slightly amateurish. It started out in reel-to-reel tapes. They were depositing those tapes in the National Archives. They had varying policies over the years on who could access those tapes. So randomly in about 1975, they decided, nope, we're going to put these tapes away in the National Archives, but nobody gets to see them, because that makes sense. And that policy changed in the mid-'80s. And since about the mid-'90s, these tapes have been publicly accessible, but they also, for the longest time, just sort of gathering dust at the National Archives, right? Because who's going to go mount a reel-to-reel tape on one of those big machines in the National Archives? So that's where OYE comes in. Our founder, Jerry Goldman, who was a political scientist at Northwestern for 30 plus years, is now a research professor of law at Chicago-Kent, took it upon himself to make this important collection of materials available to the public. This is Roe versus Wade. This is Gideon versus Wainwright. This is Miranda versus Arizona. These are major moments in U.S. history, turning points for the law. They should be accessible in the most modern way possible. So that meant building a website, digitizing the collection, posting it online. I mentioned the collection goes all the way back to 1955. It took us something like 20 years to get it done, but we have actually, as of last year, digitized the entire collection, going back to the very start in 1955. Golf claps, thank you. So we're kind of proud of that. It took a long time to get it done. We're still working on cleaning up the data, and posting the data. It's taking us a little while. But it has all been digitized, and we're still pulling data going forward. So we're moving forward, and people are taking an interest in this collection. So we get 7 to 8 million site visits per year. 80% of that traffic comes from educators or students. And most of the other 20% is people like journalists, generally interested members of the public, non-lawyers. So OYE is really a tool that's focused on the general public and helping, and law students, I should mention law students as well. First-year law students especially use OYE. In addition to the oral arguments, We've added metadata around the Supreme Court opinions that, again, emphasizes the fact that we're really a project that's focused on the public in general and not lawyers. So we have case summaries, we have a lot of metadata about the cases, we have decision information, some primary source documents, things like that, all to try to, just educate average people about what's going on at the Supreme Court. We also introduced a mobile app a couple of years ago called Pocket Justice. It's 99 cents in the App Store, has all of the constitutional law cases, which are the ones most people are really interested in. We have a second app that focuses on the current docket at the court that's tied to a blog that's run by our sister institute at Chicago Kent called iSCOTUS Now. And that, again, is about what's going on currently at the court, recent cases, geared a little bit more towards legal professionals and librarians. So now that we've got this whole collection done, we're looking at ways to sort of expand OEA's mission a little bit, right? But before we can do that, we had to sort of spruce up things a little bit, make the site really highly polished and professional looking. So I'm going to show you a little sneak peek of what we're going to launch this summer, which is the redesigned OEA.org. Go to the home page. So this is it. A little more polished, a little more modern looking. Still working on tweaking some of the looks and the icons and things like that, but you get the sense of where we're going with it. A little more high sheen and transparent glass and all that stuff that we ripped off from iOS. So the basic features are already out there. You're welcome to go to beta.oea.org and play around with it yourself. I can't promise it'll work on IE. I haven't tested that yet. With all the cases out there, we've cleaned up the way we represent the cases. So we have all the metadata, facts of the case, questions just like we had before. Christina has done a terrific job of cleaning up the little thumbnails that we present of the justices to make it look a little bit more modern and professional. Please forgive the fact that Anthony Scalia is someone else right now. I was testing an image. This is how we represent the way the justices vote in the case. So this was a 5-4 case from last year. And the justices who voted in the minority are sort of grayed out. We took a lot of time perfecting our data model. So I think we're going to represent decisions at the Supreme Court better than really anyone else I've seen who's doing this. So for example, take a case like the Affordable Care Act cases from a couple of years ago. That was an insanely complicated opinion. And to say that it was just a 5-4 split doesn't really capture what happened in that opinion, right? Because there were really 4 or 5, depending on your count, different issues addressed by the court in that decision. There was a preliminary issue about the Tax Anti-Injunction Act that the court ruled on 9-0. There was the Commerce Clause question, which was 5-4 to one side. The Taxing and Spending Clause, Taxing Clause question, which was 5-4 to the other side. And there were 2 questions dealing with the Medicaid expansion in that case. And most media outlets and most other websites would say, that was a 5-4 decision. But that doesn't really explain what happened there. So we've done a lot to really improve the way we're representing those decisions. So on the Affordable Care Act page, you would see multiple decision widgets sort of sliding through in a more comprehensive description of the decision in that case. Our creme de la creme, our core mission, is still related to the audio. So we've cleaned up our audio player. This is still more of a preliminary design. We're tweaking it a little bit, but we've improved the way it looks and feels and interacts. We've added a lot of features to it. So you can actually take little snippets of the transcript, download them, put them in a PowerPoint presentation, share them on Facebook or Twitter if you're really nerdy, whatever you want to do with them. Search individual transcripts, search over multiple transcripts, all that functionality is there. We wanted to sort of replicate the way it feels to be in the courtroom, because that's something very few Americans get the opportunity to do, is actually see oral arguments in the Supreme Court. So on modern browsers, let's see if this will work here.
Argument first this morning in case 12-399, adoptive couple versus baby girl. Ms. Blatt?
Jump down.
Are you suggesting?
So it's kind of hard in a room like this. We can hear, it sounds to me like Sonia Sotomayor is sitting over here, and it'll sound like John Roberts is sitting right in front of me. It'll sound like Elena Kagan is sitting somewhere over here. I went a little crazy one day and decided to play around with the Web Audio API, which is built into some modern browsers. So that's the experience we're sort of going for, is to really put you in the courtroom, make you feel like you're sitting in the courtroom.
Question, are you using left and right audio? So if somebody's listening with like one headphone, they
It
can't
sounds
hear the other?
beautiful on headphones. So it's actually built into it's the web audio API that's built into Chrome, I know, has it. I don't think Firefox has
But
it.
if somebody's listening with only one earphone, are they going to hear both sides?
Yeah, they'll hear both sides.
Okay.
It'll sound a little more faint because it sounds like it's coming from over here,
Okay.
but it actually works if it's only one.
We've had faculty who do that. They like have one earbud
And it's
in.
like, what's going on?
And when something does that, all of
Yeah.
a sudden they're like, it's broken.
Yeah, it's not actually left and right only. It's actually panning from side to side, and it doesn't go to the extreme like someone's sitting 100 miles that way. So you can still hear it. Yeah, that's something I tested for too. So that's a sense of where we're going, what the redesign looks like. We're doing a massive data cleanup associated with this too, because our focus originally was getting all this audio digitized and up and running. Now we're actually taking the time to go back and clean it all up. So one thing sort of bizarre at the court, until 2004, the official transcripts of oral argument proceedings before the Supreme Court didn't identify who the justices were when they were asking a question, right? The court spoke with one voice or some crap like that. Instead, it just said question, right? Because that's helpful. So we actually took the time to go back and identify all of these speakers. We did that in an automated fashion, and then we did that in a manual way to make sure it's really, really accurate. So we can say with about 95 to 98% confidence that we have the right speaker identified in the audio transcripts. We've also taken time to make sure everything's aligned properly so it's in sync, make sure we have as much as we have as humanly possible, and we've also identified the cases on the website that we know we don't have, that the National Archives lost this reel of tape, it's somewhere next to Kennedy's brain in the National Archives, we'll never see it again. Or it's inside the Ark of the Covenant or something. So we're making that information publicly available. We've had this for a while, but a lot of people don't know about it. We're also posting the opinion announcements as they come down from the court. Well, not as they come down from the court. Whenever a decision is made at the court, the justices will actually make a statement from the bench summarizing their decision. Occasionally, there'll be a summary of the dissent from the bench. That audio is not released by the court until the start of the subsequent term, basically to make sure it has as little newsworthiness as possible. But we're still grabbing it, we're still editing that down and posting the opinion announcements and attaching them to the appropriate cases. So that audio collection is out there as well. So this is what we're doing with the U.S. Supreme Court. We're going to expand now beyond that institution. I mentioned only 2% of Americans can actually identify all 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices. There are more obscure legal institutions than that in this country. So Christina can tell you about it.
So looking at OEA's mission, we wanted to carry this out to a state level as well. Because if you look at the U.S. Supreme Court, these are decisions that impact our lives. But also, there's something that hits a little bit closer to home, and that's your own state Supreme Court, because they're making decisions that impact you even more, and you may not recognize it. And it's because a lot of these institutions are quite opaque. And actually, first, to illustrate that, I will show you just an example.
For the recording, should you pass the microphone?
Oh, it should be. Hold
Oh,
on.
okay, I didn't know.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think it's picking me up very well. I'll try to talk louder.
No, we can hear you fine. It's just, I don't know if the recording, I don't know how many people watch them.
Let's see, I'll try and move it up a little bit. So if you go to the Florida Supreme Court's website, you'll see that this looks a tad outdated. And this is the case with many states. And it's not the fault of the Supreme Court. A lot of this funding is allocated by state legislatures. So they're working with a very small staff. And their staff, their number one priority is working with the docket, making sure that the process is seamless. So if you're just a journalist or a teacher or a student or an everyday citizen who wants to know what's going on in your state, and you just click on oral arguments, you get this PDF, and it's not really that straightforward. It's not easily searchable. So this is not the ideal way of presenting your state's Supreme Court's rulings. So OEA is going to expand its model to the 5 largest states and their state Supreme Courts. So beginning in Texas, California, Illinois, Florida, and New York. And so this is a night grant. It's their News Challenge grant. So initially, we've been working a lot with the Texas Supreme Court, and believe it or not, they are quite tech savvy. They're very much about open data. They're really excited about this. So they want this opportunity. A lot of state Supreme Courts do. They want the chance to be able to make these decisions more accessible to the public. So working with Texas and California as well, the Texas court feed is they're actually delivering us all of their data through a JSON feed. So they've constructed that. It has things like who's arguing, what's the docket number, where did this case arise, what were the lower court rulings, which courts, how did the justices decide, and then compiling all that and delivering it in a similar way as OEA does with plain English case summaries, so anyone without a legal background can understand it. Also updating the case information as it comes down, showing how the different justices decided. And to illustrate why that's important, I brought up two case examples, one in California and one in Texas. I'll begin with California. At the end of March, the California Supreme Court agreed to hear the Greater Los Angeles Agency on Deafness versus CNN. Now, this is a case that looks at the California Disabled Persons Act. So the question is, the act references, quote, places of public accommodation. So the question is, do those places of public accommodation include websites, these non-physical places? And so the Greater Los Angeles Agency on Deafness, GLAD, went to CNN and charged them saying that your online video should have closed captioning because we deserve that right. We should be able to consume the news as well. And the Ninth Circuit ruled that, well, actually, it's CNN's First Amendment right. It's free speech, how they choose to deliver their news. That's not something that you can really tell them how to do. So now the California Supreme Court will decide this case. And if you go Google this case, you will find very little about it, despite the fact that it involves a major news agency. There's not a whole lot of reporting. A lot of the reports that you'll read about it comes from paid services like Law 360, a LexisNexis company, or law blogs that aren't really geared towards the everyday citizen. You still have to have a pretty good understanding of law. So that is one example. And another example is a case that the Texas Supreme Court just decided yesterday, and this was a split decision. It's Ritchie v. Root. So this is a case that deals with shareholder oppression with closely held corporations. And there are 37 states, including Texas, that have statutes which protect minority shareholders in closely held corporations. But Texas kind of deviated from what they previously ruled on within that statute. And the defendant claimed that, or alleged that she was trying to sell her stocks and the shareholders wouldn't pay her a fair price, and they also refused to meet with prospective buyers as well. So when she brought this to the lower courts, they ruled in her favor, but when it got up to the Texas Supreme Court, 6 justices ruled that no, under the current statute, this is not oppressive action, and they ruled in favor of the corporation. But this is the 9 justices on the Texas Supreme Court. If you see the third from the right standing, Justice Guzman, she wrote the dissenting opinion and said, this is actually pretty significant because we have ruled against something that has been a part of this state's statute for a long time, and it's a departure from a long afforded protection to minority shareholders. So this is a case that would very much affect businesses in Texas, but that's also a case that if you look up, you will find very little about. If you want to read the opinions, that's how you're going to get the news of that. So as we work with these courts, in Texas, our content partner is the Texas Tribune. So they will be able to provide some of those case summaries, putting in plain English, updating it on a regular basis. And they're also quite excited about it because the Texas Tribune is doing some really great reporting within the state. But you also have to take into consideration that I mean, their staff has a limited amount of time to devote to certain beats. So if there's not a whole lot of searchable information on a court, and you have to go through the weekly orders, and you have to read all the opinions, that's a lot of time. That's several people working full-time on just one thing, and they may not have the resources. If they do, a lot of other local news outlets don't. So as we work with them, we're trying to be able to put something out there that allows teachers, students, everyday citizens, journalists, and anyone who's interested in knowing what is your state Supreme Court deciding that affects you, that isn't being covered right now, that isn't easily accessible. So as we go about this, we're looking for other content partners as well in other states so that we can provide this and cater it as well to each specific state. Because for example, in Texas, you have the Supreme Court of Texas and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. So 2 high courts, and within a year, their caseload is over 200 cases. So that's quite a bit to handle. So as we go through these 5 states initially, we want you to be able to take this data and we want you to use it. And Matt can talk a little bit more about different ways that you can do that.
Really quickly.
Oh yeah, of course.
You mentioned that they were providing the information through something called like JSON or something.
JSON.
It's a JSON feed. So it's a structured data feed that we get from the court on a regular basis and ingest it into OYA.
How do you spell that?
JSON. It's fairly technical, so it's not really readable on its own. In fact, I'll show you an example in a second. So it's something that you would want to pull into another service if you're wanting to do something with the Texas Supreme Court's data. That was a great segue. Thank you for that question. Because I'm going to show you how the other way you can get this data. So until now, OEA's data has been available from OEA, and other people have used it by sort of contacting us and saying, hey, I want this transcript or something like that, because I want to use it for the story I'm writing. I want this audio clip because I want to play it on NPR or something like that. And we love those requests. We love helping out journalists, but we're a staff of 3. So it's usually me or Christina or Jerry, like literally going on the website, cutting this audio file down and shipping it to someone. That's not terribly efficient because we've got a lot of other things going on. We wanted to make this data as available and accessible and usable to people as possible. So when OEA goes live, or when the revised version of OEA goes live, and when our state Supreme Court sites, as our state Supreme Court sites go live, we're adding an API so that any developer can go in and grab information about the case. This, by the way, is JSON. If you're not technical or you're not a developer, this looks really ugly, but to a developer, this is beautiful. Because you can easily parse out every bit of information about the case in a really simple, structured, easy way. So this is every field that you see on the OEA case page and then some about our cases. All of the cases before the Supreme Court have a equivalent page like this. We have information about the history of the case, where it came from, when the court did different things with it, and you'll see the exact same thing on our state Supreme Court sites. We also have information on the audio. So in addition to a link to the audio file, we can just quickly grab it. We have the entire transcript accessible through this means, right down to speaker identification information, time synchronization information, who's speaking when, who gets interrupted when, all that kind of information is out there, parsable in an easy, simple format, so you don't need to call me to have me cut an audio file for you. Go do it yourself. Not that I don't like talking to people, but I'm kind of grumpy. So that we're really excited about this. We're really interested in seeing what people do with this data. We've always sort of viewed ourselves as like a library, right? We post the information out there, we make it accessible for the public because we want the general public to consume it on OEA, but we're not greedy with our data. We want anyone to take it and use it and do something interesting with it. And we don't know what you're going to do with it. You might take a feed and add it to your newspaper's website or something like that. Might pull it into your library blog. We've had a few really interesting use cases with data. So we have one of the greater spit takes in history happened at the U.S. Supreme Court. Since the very beginning of the U.S. Supreme Court, they've had spittoons, ceremonial spittoons behind the bench. And you can hear one of the justices forming a gigantic loogie at one point during oral arguments. That is a great sound effect. It's a little gross, but it's great. That was unusual. Even more unusual. This is my favorite use case of our data ever. There's a theater company called the Elevator Repair Service Theater Company, based in Brooklyn, that does sort of edgy performance art. They did a stage show that was a highly accurate recital of a Supreme Court oral argument transcript. And it was extraordinarily well reviewed. They're actually on tour right now. So I saw them when they were in Chicago. They were in DC for a while. I think they're on the West Coast now. They're still touring. The New York Times gave them a great review. Emily Bazelon on Slate gave them a great review and said, these guys made an oral argument transcript sound good. I would listen to them perform the phone book if they wanted to do it. So that was really interesting. You don't have to put on a stage show, but we would love to see how you're using this data. So if you use it, you are absolutely welcome to go take a look at it. We're going to post documentation before the site goes live. Let us know what you're doing with it. I'd love to talk about it at talks like this, to encourage other people to do something with it, build an app around it, do whatever, make a little Clarence Thomas soundboard, because we actually have audio clips of him actually saying something. Go for it. Be creative. And let us know what you're doing with it. Or you could just incorporate OEA, if you're a teacher, an educator, incorporate OEA into your lesson plans. Use our oral argument audio, our player, our website, to make your students feel like they're actually at the Supreme Court, because it is an amazing experience, a really rich experience. And at the state Supreme Court level, which is these institutions that Americans tend to know nothing about, we really hope that this project will enable educators and journalists to really enlighten people about what's going on at these institutions. Christina didn't mention this, but these people are elected. And we're actually voting for these justices, and we're picking them based on how good their name sounds. We should actually know a little bit about what they're doing. Not everyone has to be a legal expert, but it would be great to know about it. I also want to mention, in case you are a developer and you're thinking of pulling down everything that we have on OEA, which is great, but I'm also our sysadmin, so don't kill me. We're going to post all of our data in a big fat tarball file that you can just download from the site. Don't go scraping if you don't have to. It'll save me a lot of headaches. And the last way that you can sort of help us expand the project, Christina mentioned the Texas Tribune. It's a fabulous partner institution for us in the state of Texas. That's one of 50. We want to do this in every state. So if you're in one of the 5 largest states, if you're not one of the 5 largest states, and you're interested in helping out and contributing to this project by actually writing case summaries, collecting metadata for us, come talk to us. We'd love to have more partners working on this and really expanding OEA beyond the U.S. Supreme Court and in Texas. We're also going to hope to do all of the federal circuit courts of appeals. So we are sort of dipping our toes in the water in D.C., and we're expanding to the other circuits eventually. We need partner institutions for those courts as well. And that is its own interesting can of worms, but we'd love help with that, because I mentioned we're a staff of 3. So it was fairly short. We have plenty of time for questions, and we're happy to take whatever you have. But thank you. Your hand with it right away. Go ahead.
Well, I'm from Texas, so I'm a little really interested. But I was curious, okay, so are you just helping the state do their thing, or are you actually creating the page for them? Or
we're going to have a site called texas.oea.org that looks a lot like what I demoed. We're still working on the design, but it's going to have the same basic layout and look and feel of OEA. It has all the same information you see on OEA for the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll have that for the Texas courts. But it is an independent website, separate from the Texas Supreme Court website. We're getting all of our data from Texas, so it's authentic. We're not just scraping and pulling what's on their site. I did mention this, but we're also doing an app for all the state Supreme Courts. That's a little bit further down in the pipeline, but we hope to have that out sometime next year. We'll have all of the state Supreme Courts, and pick the ones you want to follow. It might just have Texas at launch, because that's the only site we're going to have right away. The Texas site we expect to launch sometime in September-ish. California, we have our fingers crossed, we'll get their act together and get us a data feed by the end of the year. They've been really helpful with us, but bureaucracies are slow. So we're hoping to have that site out by the end of the year as well, and then the other 3 states we're hoping next year.
I'm just curious, because I used to be on the AALL committee on authentication, and when you get the feed, is that coming from the reporter of decisions and already official, or is this like an unofficial text, or how does that work?
It's so it's exactly what they have on the website at that moment. So if it's a really recent decision, it's not official, not officially published, and it could change. As they change data, we're updating our data as well. So we're getting a constant update of information from them.
Wow.
This is coming straight out of their content management system. So whatever data they have is what we have.
Hey Matt, who's writing your summaries? You showed us the one for.
So for the U.S. Supreme Court, they're written by law students at Chicago and Kent, and we review and edit them before we post them, so make sure they're accurate and fairly authoritative. Once in a while we have a few grammatical issues and things like that because they're law students. They try to capitalize every other word. But at the state Supreme Court level, the Texas Tribune is actually writing all those case summaries for us. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I think we're gonna, if we don't have a content provider for like California, we'll go live. I think we're actually gonna talk about trying to pull those in. Okay, cool. Yeah, because they're a little legal jargony for our purposes. I'm looking at what we can do for the general public, but there's something better than nothing.
I'm gonna take a look at the way some of our summaries are.
Yeah. Who writes your summaries?
We hired some lawyers.
Yeah, that's why they said a lawyer.
We wanted to make sure that they were accurate.
Yeah, and that's sort of the challenge of balancing, you know, something that sounds like it's understanding average people versus maybe, I don't know, it's covering every legal angle.
Our target is definitely lawyers who want to know about all these things.
Sure, yes.
I mean, we also want to cover the.
Okay, thank you for remembering.
So hopefully it
Yeah, it's been, this is kind of,
I was like, I'm gonna.
You know, we at LII, our Supreme Court will.
this is the email vacation.
We
Really enjoying that.
Accidentally.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So.
There have no modesty panels. It's like forever.
Yeah, I know.
They love the Blackboard,
If
hate
there
the
ever
modesty
comes
panel.
a time when you're looking at different.
Yeah,
they love the Blackboard.
There's so many layers
Well,
of
I
Blackboard.
watched yesterday too, and here, like the very first layer, it is like you are
Yeah,
right there.
That might
No one will ever
always,
sit at
always
it.
bother us to,
Well,
hey,
plus the
can you
chairs
go
aren't
back and do
even
a,
necessarily
some kind of what Tom
Whoever
calls a
is
capstone
sitting at
piece,
that-
when the decision comes out, and you code the no, because other people.
I wore a skirt today and
Um,
wearing trousers.
At a minimum, we ought to be pointing
Gives sense of
our
responsibility.
Yeah.
users, viewers,
That side
everyone,
of this table
our
makes sense in the
audience,
bigger one.
to what's interesting about our previews
Further away.
is their previews, they have really
Because
long.
that's
tails.
about the amount of
They're viewed
space
much
that's
more
on the second floor.
the following year than they are.
That's okay.
I think what it is
Obviously, the table's blocking
so
it out, that's just
when
space.
we publish one of these things,
Because of the problem is
or
the
batch of
government
these
tabs
things,
around them.
there's a spike right away. We
Although
nail them
I
out.
was in a presentation here.
I like to
We
walk
nail out the
around.
summary,
Yeah.
hyperlinks to the full thing. There's a spike on the day of
Where
the
somebody
argument.
did use all the blackboards.
And then this just plays,
She was
just stays
going
pretty
at it.
flat
She was
until the next year.
What-
And I think
what
what
was
it
it
is,
on?
honestly,
Like, it was
is
She was
people
talking,
writing
was she
papers,
from
an
University
audience
of
and
Washington?
Yeah.
And she was talking
it's
about
people, our
evidence-based
most viewed
legal
case
education.
for this,
If you plan on.
for this Supreme Court term,
Oh, she was
starting in
doing slides, she
October,
was not
were
interested.
donor
No, but I
cases
mean,
from
how
last
would
year.
you know
Really?
ahead of time what you're gonna
because
have?
These
this
people
kind
want
of-
to achieve of your articles, right?
So it's high school and college kids
She
sit
had
down and write
specific topics she
about
wanted to do, but she
Yeah.
wanted to do
those
more of a
issues.
discussion.
Like,
So she
They're
was
finding
like
stuff.
everywhere.
I thought
Yeah.
about like.
So they're
just-
reading something that's written as an explanation
Yeah, I mean,
of
it
what's
would be
going
kind of
to
fun if we
happen.
had something
They're
like that, you
using
could
it
have a
from,
secret
they're
appeal.
using it
Yeah.
to understand what
So
really
you
happened.
treat it like a slide, but then
So
I would just.
That's interesting. I think,
Like
I'd like to
erasing
take a look at those.
fiddle
Yeah.
sheets.
At the very least, we should be linking to them too,
Debbie
because they're probably more, we usually like two paragraphs.
yeah, ours are very, I mean, they're very detailed.
Yeah.
They're,
But we do get requests periodically, people want to know more about the back.
Well,
At a
using
minimum, we
like
should be looking
PowerPoint,
at
they're
these.
just standing and talking at you the entire time. I
published
think it
two
had,
in the Federal
what had their
Magazine.
boards and
And we're
FSU, but I
starting
think
to
it had.
publish
one
them, we have deals now with the
Right now, in the law, they don't even use the PowerPoint.
San Diego and Oregon chapters
We had a
of
couple
the Federal
faculty who
Bar
are giving a
Association.
talk somewhere else, and they're like, are you gonna have slides? And she's like,
And they're now publishing
you're gonna
the
have to
cases
show me
that come
how
up from the Ninth Circuit's
It's a
report.
team of
They're
people out
publishing
there.
our
Honestly,
previews
she's also-
They
in
just stand up
their
and
chapter
talk,
newsletters.
that's all they do,
We're
the
trying
law
to expand
professors.
our professional
I guess that's
audience
what
that
the
has
cluster thing hasn't caught on yet.
impact for our students.
Sure.
You know,
It
their
depends
job.
on-
Well, I know what you mean. I know about that.
Same thing. So,
So
yeah,
theoretically,
yeah, I'll take a look at it.
There's definitely,
Yeah,
there's a lot of synergies
They
there.
should-
Yeah, absolutely.
Thread and then have a
Yeah.
discussion.
We should be linking to those, because we, like I said, we get requests for more information on the case, and we try to
We're
keep
gonna
it
have a
simple.
discussion with like 100 people. We can't.
But,
Well, you
yeah,
can,
we should
you
be
can do it, but it's
We
not.
also do, I'm
it's
very excited
about
this year, we
group work
always
and
do
stuff like
a
that, which is where
an
classroom
overall
life is
term
really-
Yeah,
summary.
but I mean, like, yeah, you do
It
an
could be. It's done sort
auditorium
of-
with like 100 people.
It's been done different
Well,
in
but
different
you could
years. I
have
think Charlotte
exercise.
Snyder's done the last couple.
You have,
Met Charlotte this
you
year
have things that
previously
are-
from Rutgers, she's sort of our unofficial librarian. This year, one of my managing editors from my bulletin staff
quiz or, you know,
didn't
like
feel like
bringing
studying
up,
for the
you
bar.
know, what
and
did you
wanted
think
to
were the
adequately
silent salient
challenge
points
him
of
this
blah,
summer,
blah,
so
blah,
we
you know.
volunteered to write the term
Things
summary. And
Things
this is
share,
a
you know, whatever
super
they
smart kid.
exercise.
Going straight to
Exactly.
clerk at the.
If somebody
and
actually talked about
which just doesn't
not
happen
flipping the
anymore.
classroom, but flipping the,
And then going to
giant
district
lecture
court, and
hall.
then going back to
That would
class
be
with more-
awesome.
more selective law firms.
that's not what anybody's talking
So
about.
he's a
They're
smart
talking
guy.
about
Mhm.
flipping like
Really,
a little
that's-
research workshop
When
with
that's
5
done, I'm
people.
really hoping to get that out as many places as possible.
Here they
Yeah,
are.
very-
Well, for me,
I didn't mention this here, but one of the things we're working on,
teach
hopefully by the end of the year, is I think like a little
because
analytics section to
traditionally,
OEA, so it's sort of like
I mean, a
our
lot of times, bless you.
answer
It's not
to
average
sort of
research,
one
it's
stat
all
packet
it
they
is.
publish at the end of every term, where they put all these numbers out,
Yeah,
and
it's
little
better
charts and
for,
graphs that show, you know, how
anything
fast
you
cases
can-
were decided,
like,
who
whenever I
decided
explain
which
to somebody how to
opinions,
do
and things like
something
that.
on
But we're gonna do it,
computer,
have the JavaScript after
I,
manipulating real time
make
along
them
with
click on
things like
everything.
that.
My
Some of the
student
things that
Steven
we're
had to
finding
It,
organize
it
his
takes
thoughts
longer,
for
so
his
people do not tend to do
for
that. If they
his
explain
summary, and while cases are
We
still being
found that
decided, he
sending
can't really
stupid
start to write.
surveys instead
He's
of
apparently
things
putting a
like
monster
that.
spreadsheet of
the
cases
thing-
and
we
judges
have
and
one-
issues.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's
that-
the
I've encouraged him to share that with me when he's done it.
do it.
Yeah, but I think it would be
Or the
useful for him to, you know, take a look at that data in real time, and then I'd love to see what he's putting out, maybe we can link to it, either from like case notes or the people who are in
A
there.
couple of those faculty are really
Section
really
of the term,
really
it's all
like trying new things each time to get a sense for what's working and what's not put into the classroom. And they have different problems that they start adapting, so.
Sounds
good. What's next? What's the other side?
Break,
Our librarians got involved
and then
in it
there's-
the first time.
I was gonna go to the one about
This is a
video,
great opportunity for us to teach people like research
video
skills on the ground.
posting, capturing, posting stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's
So
gotta
what they
do,
did
I
is
have.
they.
There's another one,
And we have access to a really nice.
rebuilding law school websites.
So.
There's one about law school websites, there's one about hosting video, there's one about,
So if they answer the wrong way, for instance, this time, we've had, if they click on the wrong thing, it would take them to another spot where we've had.
Oh, there's one about JavaScript guys
That
too.
was just one of our
using
librarians
other
in
sources.
Whiteboard. They're like, okay, so you exited this way here, this way, you wrote something before. But it was less than a minute, but it was like, here's why these things, that you think are the same thing are different, let me explain that, and then you go back to the survey. And it gave us some data to get started. That's not everybody took it, which is always the problem with classroom graduates. But enough of them that they had some things to say. Okay, a lot of you answered this correctly, that's great, you got this down. Now I'm gonna take on this other issue.
I go over the Android and
Where's this gonna go?
so you can tell what they got wrong.
I don't think I had it turned with me, it's like very good, but I did send you an email, so.
Okay, yeah, so I
If you
don't
remember, you
remember
got a random
signing
IP
it
join.
right here to practice, because I can't more about that.
I think there's a page
Just
for
hired
really
a-
intense JavaScript
We're having our legal research and writing.
Well, the problem is
Sat down,
I
and
really,
instead of
fear
hiring just one new
this
legal
move
writer,
toward-
and Chicago Times is well known for its.
and it's
legal
like,
research and
we
writing
moved towards
program.
it, we moved away from it, and now we're moving back towards it again. So,
Yeah,
and that's, you know, heavy Ajax and web applications.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of an answer to mobile apps, which are 9 times out of 10 mobile apps are secretly like a single page look browser.
Right.
So if we can create a really nice mobile experience in JavaScript,
But our.
easier to do it
Just
now.
stick with something
And
that seems
dealing with
working right now, considering.
primary
what's
one
going
for
on.
BlackBerry,
Something's changed.
or
I just,
Android,
and I mean, it works fine for our
So we're
annotations just because our
hiring a new
annotations,
person for that.
you know,
So one
our
of
front end of the
existing
annotations, when
professors
people
is
are gonna
stepping up,
read,
she's
that's
great.
not gonna be a problem. That's, That's a display, we won't put that in anymore. And it's fine that we're doing
Wow.
our editing system in Angular, that's fine, because
we
it's,
have some
doesn't
people
need to
from
have
our
SEO.
clinic who are stepping down.
But I see people trying to do entire websites in Angular where they have a page with no content on it.
Well, and that's
If
one of the
praxis,
one of the many
PRE,
drawbacks in Angular. I like
Not everybody
Backbone
loves
handles
the
that a
name
little
that
better.
academics
It's
love it,
better.
or like,
Better. It's also more
I'm sure
granular.
it's a little resume,
So you don't get the full intense Angular experience from the platform.
So we're kind of, we're.
The one thing that I figure Angular might have for, it's being developed by Google, so I'm hoping that they know how to index it. And
How do we make sure that the students know how to put it on a resume?
Looks
So
good
that
on
the employer
Catalyst
sees
transfer it.
It
so that the students
yeah.
are like, I'm getting this, I'm a
Yeah.
better
You always,
hire.
you
How
always
do I
start
talk
doing
about it when
really,
I'm
really
interviewing?
serious
To make it clear to
Well, they
employers
not having good
that I've
links from
stepped up
outside.
my game.
So when Google crawls the site, they wait for
Well,
that
that's
document
what
load
we
to
get
actually
all.
look at the content.
Yes.
Or are they pulling in like
Yeah.
For that,
completely empty
getting
HTML files?
excited about the options.
Experiential learning certificate sounds
They
like
are
you wanted to
now,
teach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They are
Yeah.
doing some
Yeah.
indexing of JavaScript. In fact, we have a problem with this. We,
Well, that's the.
so, you know, we get a
yeah.
lot of people
The type
saying
of
that we take stuff
program it's gonna
down.
be, and make sure.
Yeah, you don't want to
it's-
call a certificate that.
No.
Do not do it.
No, that's
What
her
are they
title,
demanding
because
that
that's
you
what
take
she's
down?
supposed to do.
They're cases.
Yeah, actual answers.
They don't want the fact that they, you know, we get a lot, oh, I'm having a hard time finding a job because my potential employers are Googling me and finding the 40 cases of former employers I've sued. And I'm like, I think your potential employers have a right to know that you sue every company you work for. Because you know what? I wouldn't hire you. But anyway, so we get a lot, and we're not going to take it completely down because that would compromise the integrity of our database. Our database is useless if it doesn't have all the cases, right? I mean, if it doesn't have everything, it may as well have nothing. So what we do is we will put meta robots and analytics will follow under their individual page so it doesn't come up in Google. The problem we have is we have all these listing pages which have the name of all the cases, right? And we're not going to take our listing pages out. We're not going to do that. We need those pages.
No standing,
So we
yeah.
wanted to come up with a way to.
But they do have debt, so
to
that's
make
standing.
it where they weren't coming out.
Yeah, but they can get a job, what if they get a job right, I mean, it's not right, it's not right.
Right?
They're
It's
in
like,
that
oh,
particular
Googling me, they're still finding it, right? You know.
And I just.
Now they're just getting this page and they're
Well,
getting
I mean,
they still
theoretically,
find my
even
case.
if you've
but
been
that,
an employee for 1 year after law school, you
So,
can get a job.
First thing we did is
And
we
honestly,
I created this little thing
there
called
were some schools that
GSIs,
were doing
which is
funny
to
things
say
with
that
their
on the
numbers.
page,
Yeah.
And we've always been a
the
lot
only thing
more
that's on the
board
page,
meetings,
if it's a
especially
case
on
that
rates
we
and
did,
things like that.
is
Sometimes we're just like,
plaintiff v.
we're not
defendant.
gonna play these games that we know other people are playing.
That's
I don't
string.
think it's the right
Good
thing
for
to
you.
do.
And in a span
There were
tag,
things like
an ID
had
on
different structures.
JS highs underscore number on the page of
And
which
they
JS
ended
highs
up
it is.
changing some of this.
And then there is a JavaScript, you know, JS hides,
Let's make decisions around
array,
options, but at first the option
where
was,
it
you
equals,
can have a full
and then
right
basic
to
before
your
encoded version of the actual
less than
thing, the actual
that
name
you
of the
get
case.
regardless.
And so what we do is when the page loads, we have JavaScript that would go look for all the JS hides and do a basic before decode on them and display it so the
And
page
then
still
they'll put
displays
right,
properly.
say 1L.
And, but they don't show up in Google's domain, and it worked fine for
But
a while. And then
psychologically,
Google started indexing JavaScript,
students
where they actually started
rational
executing the
enough to
JavaScript
Yeah.
on the page.
They just
feel
be
like
like,
it
I will
was
be
an
top.
honest one.
I will be
So
top.
now,
I will be top.
suddenly everybody's names started coming up again, and we got
Yeah.
these people that we
Well,
removed
I chose
3
this
years
school,
ago.
they gave me just
You're,
flat,
you put
like,
me back, you put me
I got
back.
it. So yeah,
I'm like, oh shit, what did Google do now? And then Google was actually executing our JavaScript,
where if I had
and then
to be the top
indexing
third, I just was
the end
like,
result of the
they
page
wouldn't tell me what
after
percent of people guessed it.
post load.
And I was like,
So then we
they
went
also, when I
and
went on
had
the tour, they
the
apologized for it right.
the
It was Michigan
.js
State
file that
University,
does
because
the
it had good
decoding.
intellectual property thing, and that's
We
what
put
I
it in a
did like all the
directory,
courses in.
and we put a
I
robust
just looked at
text
some
that
cool
said, tell
certificate and
Google
I
not
chose
to,
that one,
Google
but I
bot
didn't
not
see
to
what I
load that
But yeah, on
JavaScript
the
file.
tour, they just
So-
said things like, when you look at the rankings,
I
why
started
would you wanna
looking.
come here? But when
So
you
until
give this,
Google
why
decides
wouldn't
to
you?
start ignoring.
And I wasn't,
I'm
I
waiting for
hadn't even
that,
looked at
yeah.
rankings.
So, because they're like, oh,
Like,
it
I
was a
came from
mistake, you
biology
surely didn't
background,
really need to
it's
block
like,
your
you have
JavaScript
this
file, we're
problem,
gonna index
yeah,
it,
it's
we're
like,
gonna
Or
ignore,
ignoring no followers.
or ignore
Yeah, it
no
doesn't
follows
matter.
on JavaScript files, but only on
And I was
JavaScript
like,
files.
what
So
is
then I'll
going
probably
on
end up doing
here?
something where I'll
Bringing this up,
actually pay
that
attention
doesn't
to
seem
what
like
user
very
agent is.
Yeah.
Well, it was like, yeah,
if you're there,
JavaScript.
knowing the tool that you're already, you know,
I'm just gonna learn screw you. It's public
It's
information.
one of those like
That's
pre-requisites.
me.
well, and then.
Now we're gonna feature your case. And we're gonna That's what I wanna say.
It's like you have an auto reply.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you for
She
bringing
was
this
part
case
of
to our
those
attention. We have now
also
featured it on our
went on that
homepage.
too, and they-
As well
they
as
were
your
like, it's
request
like
to have it
the
taken
advisor
down. It's kind of like the whole chilling effects thing, right? We've uploaded your email to chilling effects, so now people are gonna know that you tried that you would take down.
They kept implying that I was lying
you.
about it. And he was like, if this is accurate, like, he didn't, it's like had like a very high GPA in sciences too, and he's like, he thought that I was. I guess he's like, why? I guess he's like, why would you go here? And
There's
then
nothing
like,
to do about it.
and then I talked to the guy at adjunct who's like a full-time professor at UNF, and he's like, yeah, you shouldn't go here.
Right.
And he's like,
We
let
want
me
somebody
see it.
to
He's
actually-
like,
we actually
no, you
love it.
shouldn't be thinking
Want
about
cases.
here.
Asylum there.
Exactly.
That's not, that's
No
not,
chickens
that's
out
not,
after
that's
the
not forfeited
Or they file it in the wrong
No,
floor.
I
didn't
say that.
One of them, they were
I mean, I
in,
didn't
I think they were
understand.
in Maryland. And of course, we're in California,
I think it would be
and they
good
sued
to
us in
us.
Massachusetts.
Does that make sense?
Another person suing them, but that's
I
about it.
chose completely
And so,
unconscious.
naturally, we got that
Maybe-
case dismissed for,
maybe that
you know,
makes
wrong
it
venue,
easier.
and then that's over.
Yeah, who knows?
And
Well, that's.
So you really get aggressive about this. You should feature a losing case for some very prominent lawyer, like take Paul Clement and put him on the whole page or something, and wait for him to sue you.
I don't think people would.
Yeah.
Right.
For no brand.
And Gruhn, MGRUHN at OEA.org. Easy.
Yeah, I mean, I can see like, you know, big city law schools where it's not much, and then they'll like back
It's much easier to type in Chicago.
Yeah, get law, that,
MGRUHN at OA.com.
that'll work.
Okay.
.com or
.org.
Yeah.
You said .org.
Yeah.
I have a .com button on my keyboard. It just
Makes it too easy.
to use it. .com and I go,
Well, soon we're gonna have all kinds of top level names like that media.
Right.
Last days of .com.
I don't know, it doesn't mean people don't use it just because they have other choices.
Yeah, well, I think it really nasty if people don't use it, but because it's so open.
Okay, I got you. Cool. So yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know.
I'm sure Tom and Sarah must have your email.
Sarah, I know does.
Yeah.
Tom does that. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And Christina, should I get your email too, or?
Yeah, of course. So it's C Walker.
Nice, easy last name.
Yeah, right. So C Walker at OA. Okay, no problem. Got it.
Thanks for coming, Craig.
Thank you. I think there's some possibility to do some stuff here.
Yeah, I think
I hope so, yeah. I'm gonna be short.
Sinking or what?